It started with a scream that no one heard. The night air in Manhattan was quiet, almost still, that early October morning. Lights flickered dimly in the high-rise across from West 72nd, and the sound of sirens seemed far away, as though the city had agreed to hold its breath. The residents of the luxurious Belmore Towers remained oblivious as a shadow slipped from the stairwell of the 19th floor and vanished down a darkened hallway. Inside apartment 1906, a woman lay still, eyes wide in a final frozen expression of confusion and terror. Her name was Valerie Kinsey, 34, single, an art director known for her fiercely private life and minimalist lifestyle. There was no sign of forced entry, no stolen items, nothing broken. Except, perhaps, the strange detail that would come to haunt the city in the weeks ahead. A Peruvian lily, white and barely bloomed, placed delicately on her chest. Unnatural in its precision. Intentional. The tabloids dubbed him the Midnight Florist by morning. Social media, gripped by true crime obsession and digital sleuth culture, ran wild with theories. A rare flower left at every crime scene? It sounded more like a thriller novel than a New York City homicide case. But as detectives pored over surveillance footage, neighbor interviews, and hours of apartment buzzer logs, they found nothing useful. No prints, no entry signs. Just a woman, her life stolen sometime between midnight and 3 a.m., and that ghostly bloom resting like a signature. 3 weeks passed before he struck again. West 81st Street. Another woman. 38-year-old Paula Dorsey, a novelist with a penchant for true crime fiction and red wine. Her apartment door was locked from the inside. There were no bruises, no sexual assault, no struggle. Just her lifeless body curled in her writing chair, a glass of untouched Merlot beside her, and a Peruvian lily, this one tinged with violet, placed on the corner of her desk beside her laptop. The screen read, "The killer always returns." Now it was personal. The media went into a frenzy. Is NYC harboring a floral serial killer? Screamed one headline. Women in high-rises targeted by mysterious midnight killer, read another. The NYPD formed a task force. Hundreds of hours were dedicated to combing through floral databases. Botanists were brought in. How many people in the city had access to rare lilies not even native to North America? The list was smaller than one might expect. Yet every lead hit a wall. The killer knew how to hide, how to erase footprints without erasing his message. Apartment complexes across the city doubled security. Women living alone installed cameras, bars, digital locks. Yet the killer was always one step ahead. He moved like vapor, slipping past steel and software alike. True crime forums labeled him a genius. Armchair detectives theorized he was a disgruntled florist, a former lover, a man with a vendetta against loneliness. No one guessed how close they were to the truth. 3 months, 5 victims, each one a woman living alone in a high-rise apartment, all in their 30s, all independent, intelligent, accomplished, and all found dead between the hours of midnight and dawn, with no cause of death identifiable. Toxicology reports came back clean. There were no needle marks, no abrasions. It was as if he had simply taken their breath away, like a thief stealing air from their lungs. The Midnight Florist didn't just kill. He erased. Then came the night everything changed. Detective Marla Vance had become obsessed with the case. At 39, with 14 years on the force, she had never encountered a killer like this. He wasn't impulsive. He wasn't messy. He was calculated and patient. And worst of all, he didn't speak. He never called the police, never left notes, never sought credit. His only message was the flower, a language only he seemed to understand. Marla began studying floristry in her off hours. She learned that the Peruvian lily, or Alstroemeria, symbolized devotion and mutual support. A twisted irony. One night, after pulling a double shift, she received a tip from a young woman in Midtown. Her name was Tessa Raymond, a 29-year-old interior designer who had noticed something strange, a man lingering in the stairwells of her building over the last few weeks. Always at night. Always gone by morning. Her building had recently installed new cameras, and she handed over the footage without hesitation. Finally, a face. The man appeared in only a few frames, mid-30s, clean-shaven, wearing gloves, a nondescript jacket, and a baseball cap. Nothing in his appearance stood out, but Marla saw something in his posture, familiarity. He wasn't lost. He knew the building. Further footage revealed he entered without buzzing anyone. Someone had let him in. That someone, it turned out, was his sister. When police traced the man's movements, they found a connection. His name was Dean Ellery, a horticulturist by trade, formerly employed at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. Fired after an incident involving stolen seeds and accusations of harassment, charges that were dropped when the victim disappeared during the investigation. No further records. No charges. Just silence. Dean's sister, Megan Ellery, had unknowingly helped him gain access to the building. She thought he'd been trying to get his life together, had been couch surfing, doing landscaping jobs off the books. She hadn't known about the flowers. Detectives obtained a warrant. When they searched Dean's last known address, a converted warehouse in Red Hook, they found a small greenhouse on the roof. Inside, rows of rare lilies, each labeled with a woman's name. Valerie, Jocelyn, Maria, Elise. A sixth name was still blooming. Tessa. Panic set in. But Dean Ellery was already gone. The city was locked down. Flyers with his face were plastered everywhere. Police patrolled rooftops. High-rise residents were urged to remain inside after dark. True crime bloggers tracked the case like bloodhounds. Tessa was moved to a safe house, guarded by NYPD around the clock. But even that wasn't enough. The night of November 14th, the safe house was breached. A side window, left ajar by mistake. The officer stationed outside never saw anything, only heard a rustle of movement and the sound of a vase tipping over. Tessa was found in her bedroom, sitting on the edge of her bed. Alive, but pale. Paralyzed. She couldn't speak. Her pulse was faint, her pupils dilated. And beside her, on the nightstand, a lily, deep crimson. She was rushed to the hospital. Toxicologists ran tests on her blood and hair. This time, they found something. Trace amounts of a South American neurotoxin derived from a plant similar to belladonna. It induced paralysis, mimicking death without stopping the heart. Dean hadn't killed her. Not yet. It was a message. He wanted her awake. Tessa was placed under heavy sedation. While unconscious, her brain waves spiked. Fear, confusion, trauma. It was clear she had seen him. And survived. Now, the chase became a race. Detectives followed the trail of the poison, eventually tracing the neurotoxin back to a supplier in the Bronx. The man admitted to selling rare plant extracts under the table. Dean had come to him months ago, claiming he was conducting research on botanical anesthesia. But Dean Ellery wasn't conducting research. He was perfecting silence. 6 more women were placed under police protection. Each one fit the profile. Mid-30s, lived alone, connected to floristry, botany, or design. Dean had been studying them, watching, choosing. He wasn't just a killer, he was an artist of death, orchestrating each scene like a botanical tableau. And then came the twist. A letter arrived at the precinct. No return address. Inside, a pressed Peruvian lily and a note. She lied. Marla's heart sank. The note referred to Tessa. But how? She was the survivor. The lucky one. Was she not who she claimed to be? Deeper digging revealed a chilling truth. Tessa had once worked with Dean at the botanical garden. They'd dated briefly. She ended the relationship and filed a complaint after he became obsessive. She left that part out when she'd reported him. Omitted the connection. Lied to stay safe. Betrayal. Tessa hadn't been a random target. She had been the reason. But now Dean knew she'd survived. And he would return. Not to finish the job, but to deliver the final message. On December 2nd, NYPD set a trap. They used Tessa as bait, this time fully informed and willing. Her apartment was rigged with motion sensors, hidden cameras, and 6 plainclothes officers stationed in the neighboring unit. For weeks, nothing happened. The city slowly exhaled. Until one night, the elevator halted on the 14th floor. Doors slid open. No one emerged. But a moment later, the hallway camera glitched. Inside the apartment, the power flickered. Marla waited, gun in hand, heart pounding. Then the sensors lit up. Movement. Living room. Silent. Smooth. Like vapor. Marla moved. 2 officers flanked the hallway. But Dean was ready. He had studied their tactics. He slipped behind the curtain, used his knowledge of the building's ventilation system. By the time they spotted him, he was standing in the doorway of Tessa's room. He didn't speak, just held out the flower. But Tessa, awake and unafraid, whispered, "I remember you." That second of pause was all Marla needed. Dean Ellery was taken down in the hallway. No gunfire, no blood, just the slow collapse of a man who had made death his masterpiece. At trial, Dean never spoke. His defense claimed mental illness, obsessive delusion. The prosecution painted him as a cold, calculating predator who used beauty as camouflage. He was sentenced to life in a maximum security facility. But the legend of the Midnight Florist didn't fade. His victims were remembered, their lives honored in a memorial garden planted on the rooftop of the NYPD's Manhattan Division, a garden of lilies, each with a name. And every now and then, a flower would appear outside a woman's door. A reminder that silence, too, can be a scream.